I'd like to consider myself an anime veteran. Perhaps I haven't been in the game since the very beginning, but I've watched hundreds of shows, and also Naruto, which is like 50 anime all on its own. I watched space monkeys shout about power levels as a child. I watched whatever Slop had big anime titty when I was a teenager. And these days, I usually only watch things that I first receive as recommendations from friends and trusted curators. All this to say that I think I have the experience necessary to judge the quality of anime. This video is going to be me judging a lot of shonen battle anime, and how Vinland Saga takes what's good from the genre to create something great. Probably not a good video if you just want a review or something along those lines, but is a good video if you like thinking about what sets a good show apart from a mediocre or bad one. Also, just so we're clear, this is only talking about Season 1. Season 2 is a completely different beast, and I personally feel betrayed when I was forced to watch the 10th episode of Farmville with sad PTSD man. Also, obviously spoilers. What makes a shonen battle show interesting? Part 1. Power levels. It's been said many times, but it is the truth. What makes a character interesting isn't so much what they can do, but their limitations. This holds true for a setting as well. It's a paradox, but restrictions can actually make things more interesting. Consider Pokemon for a moment. 6v6 Smogon. At the start of Gen 8, Dracovish was so hilariously broken that you needed straight immunity to water-type moves, or else the most powerful defensive mons would crumple under the power of a Vicious Rend. -2 team slots, where every team has the Dracovish and the Dracovish counter. But Knack, this is anime, not a video game. True. But the same idea can be applied. Part of the reason why the medieval time period gets so much attention in our media is because of the inherent restrictions. Generally speaking, society is more fragmented. The world moves at a much slower pace, and individual skilled combatants had a much greater influence over the course of war, and therefore history. It's so terribly boring, but the power of instant, long-distance communication via something like radio would require an army of Thorkels to counterbalance. So, when Shonen raises the stakes with superpowers that are borderline god powers, it undermines how something is grounded in reality, and it's hard to get a sense of scale. As an example, in My Hero Academia, All Might's power is just punch hard. How is this even in the same ballpark as Guy who can make teleportation portals? Just think about the kinds of silly things you could get up to in the Portal games, like opening a portal to the moon. Think about how the Goblin Slayer unleashed the depths of the ocean with a portal to cut a giant troll demon thing in half. How does this guy who could theoretically do these wild things without eons of preparation exist in the same world as Punch Goodly? So, when you get a show like Vinland Saga, where, sure, the main characters are obnoxiously strong, cutting through metal helmets and cutting men in half, it's still within the realm of believability. Even if a nearly 8-foot-tall man doesn't exist, we can imagine his strength if he did. Holding back the superpowers that's common in other shonen battle, and grounding the power of our fighters in reality, lets the viewers take a look at the guy cutting through multiple men with each swing of his weapon and inherently understand his power. We don't need power levels. We don't need some side character explaining with his internal monologue going like, "Oh my god, normally a man would be lucky to kill a man with a single swing of his sword. Thorkel is so powerful for being able to cut 3 men in half while dual-wielding axes."
Those aren't just random punches either. They're targeted. And every single one of them is more than 100% of his power.
I fucking hate that character every time they show up in a show. A perfect place for everybody to apply the basic show, don't tell principle. Unfortunately, shonen creators write themselves into corners when they pull shit like, he's combining 3 different chakra elements and then he shoots a giant laser beam that kills 1 billion people. This is just DBZ power levels, but with extra steps. Vinland Saga circumvents the need to express power levels by grounding the combat in reality. Part 2. Strategy. Part of what makes battle anime so interesting is the strategies that the combatants use. This is what made early Naruto actually feel pretty interesting. The, oh shit, we're fighting a real ninja. How do we free Kakashi-sensei so he even stands a chance? So then, Naruto uses a shadow clone plus the transformation jutsu to disguise his actual position with the whole shuriken bait and switch and then get a surprise attack. This is a well thought out and cool strategy that combines the use of a handful of already pre-existing mechanics that have been introduced previously in the story. The ability to make clones of yourself is cool, but you want to know what's more cool? Implementing those clones into a strategy. Fast forward to Naruto in the future, and now it's, how bigly can we make this Rasengan blast to kill dude? Another aspect that plays into strategy is, what is the goal for the battle? Shonen battle typically answers this question with, kill the enemy dude, or beat him within an inch of his life, etc. It also has the tendency to have tournament arcs, where the shonen battle is boiled down to its base component of 1v1 battles between named characters. This is all fine and dandy, but there are far more interesting ways to test your might than reduce the enemy HP to 0. Another example with early Naruto is the second stage of the Chunin exams, where you must accomplish 2 things. Acquire 2 different types of scrolls, with each party getting 1 of the 2 types. Then, get to the finish line. This small change to the circumstances makes a world of difference. By tying victory to an item on a single person in a group, information is now an important component to victory, since fighting someone with the same type of scroll as you isn't particularly beneficial. You can choose your targets. The multi-day journey introduces fatigue as a component. You could, theoretically, just beat every other contestant if you were insane enough. God, Naruto had so much potential. Weekly shonen grind just really kills the series. Now consider your typical shonen battle in another anime. What kind of strategies do you see in Dragon Ball Z? Just unlock your next new transformation. Nice. Even if I think it's overused, the stalling for time to Spirit Bomb is still more interesting than most other scenarios in Dragon Ball Z. What about My Hero? Well, All Might's only power is punch, so that just means he needs to punch harder when he's losing. Here's where the power of determination trope from anime comes from. If you can't win, you just don't want it hard enough. So have a few flashbacks, think back on your journeys. Remember that hot babe you're gonna smash when you come home victorious, etc. Then suddenly the protagonist wins. Is that satisfying? I think that it's just happened so many times we've become desensitized to it. Now let's look at Vinland Saga. The fact that it's medieval doesn't give it an auto pass on this one, fortunately, so there's a bit more to talk about. Nobody has any cheat codes or some kind of rock, paper, scissors trap cards that counter each other's abilities. A lot of the victories that Ashalad brings to the table comes from his ability to prepare for a battle. Consider the absolutely barbarian-pilled solution of just carry your boats across the land so you can attack from the other side of the river. That is something that you cannot just make happen without first analyzing the situation and then coming up with a novel solution. This surprise factor lets Ashalad not only outwit his enemies, but also get the upper hand on his dubious allies and get away with all the gold. This perfectly combines both things that I was talking about. Create a scenario where strategy is even a possibility by presenting a unique circumstance or challenge, i.e., raid the enemy fort and steal the gold before your allies turn on you. Then also come up with some kind of strategy to take advantage of the unique circumstances. Just carry the boats into position, lol. This kind of strategy is what makes Ashalad such an interesting and entertaining main character to watch. He has goals that aren't necessarily kill the enemy guy, protect the prince, escape with the loot, escape Thorkel, maintain troop morale while traveling through a harsh winter. TLDR, if in your show people prepare for battles with training arcs, you are missing out on so much complexity that makes conflict interesting. Part 3. The rest. The other sections of this video had a central conceit to them, but this one is probably going to be more rambly, where I point at thing and go, Vinland Good. Having quote-unquote good guys is a very easy way to establish who the audience should be rooting for. And, I mean, obviously we shouldn't root for Magneto because he wants to give everybody superpowers. Wait, no, but in all seriousness, the binary of good and bad, while non-existent, is a useful tool for writers. You know what else is fun? Character-driven narratives that don't conform to this binary. Vinland Saga has one good guy in Thor's, but he dies almost immediately. He's more like a redeemed villain than a true good guy anyway. I love how Vinland Saga gives us characters that, when you talk to them, they seem like honorable men. The royalty of the show has nothing but good things to say to each other, treating each other with respect. But behind their backs, they ready their poison and assassins. There's conniving and backstabbing, but there's also loyalty and honor. Ragnar's single-minded dedication to his prince might not get him anywhere, but you can still respect the hustle. Thorkel might not care for whose side he fights on, but when he interacts with those that possess a strong will, he treats them with his respect, albeit in his bloodthirsty Viking way. It doesn't feel like anybody is the good guy. The other side fights on the side of justice. Every battle is just a bunch of guys forced to fight each other, either to subsist through pillaging or to defend from the pillagers. My opinion, a pretty realistic depiction of the kinds of scenarios that pop up in war. The show also does a nice job of showing how people's good actions don't always lead to positive outcomes. Consider the aforementioned Ragnar and his attachment to Prince Canute. He thought he was doing a good thing by raising him as a boy rather than a prince. In the end, this coddling is what gets him killed by Ashalad, who wants to use Canute to get into a position of power. Remember that peasant that pulled Thorfinn out of the river and nursed him back to health? You remember how her act of kindness was rewarded? A slight warning before she got her village ransacked by Vikings. The show lets the viewer indulge in the glory-filled battles to the death. It lets us bask in the glory that awaits us in Valhalla for our honorable death. It does what is so typical for shonen battle and letting two skilled warriors battle to the death in one-on-one combat. It also isn't afraid to let us peer into the depraved depths of what humans are capable of. The act of treating people as possessions through slavery. The rampant ransacking of villages where men claim everything of value and then some. The episode where the peasant girl plays with her stolen ring only for her family and village to die zooms in on just how far people are willing to go in order to accomplish their goals. I found this particular episode odd because it didn't seem much different than what the squad normally does, minus how people who are opposed to this idea were also present. Here are some concluding thoughts. It's funny making a comparison between characters in Vinland Saga and something like Naruto. You get Thors as the plucky protagonist who doesn't think like everybody and fights for lofty goals. You have Thorfinn as the Sasuke-like, I will avenge my family type guy. You got Thorkel as the stand-in for I must get stronger, fight me type guy that pops up so frequently in shonen battle. I guess Canute is the this isn't even my final form type guy. Don't really know what a good comparison for Ashalad is though. He's a special snowflake. If we use my previous comparison, unlike most anime, the protagonist of Vinland Saga dies immediately, leaving only the scrubs who can't save the world behind. Thorfinn as Sasuke is interesting because we get to see how he actually interacts with the target of his vengeance as he grows up beside him. Thorkel feels completely out of place in this anime because of how closely he adheres to shonen battle tropes in a show that otherwise doesn't follow the cookie-cutter training arc into battle with villain, into training arc, into tournament arc, etc. At the same time, he's the Vikingist dude that you just can't hate despite how much death and destruction he single-handedly causes. I play a lot of tabletop role-playing games, and the ones that I've played always assume you're some kind of hero fighting evil like Call of Cthulhu or Dungeons & Dragons. Sometimes the idea gets tossed around of, hey, let's play an evil campaign where we're all the bad guys. But such ideas have always failed, usually because bad guys do some twisted shit that most people aren't comfortable with doing. Vinland Saga feels like one of those quote-unquote evil campaigns, where a lot of the time you're doing heinous shit, but you try to focus more on the epic adventure part of your battles against epic foes, scoring treasures and throwing kingdoms into chaos for glory and prestige. Many of the characters undoubtedly do horrible things, but the show forces us to see who they are as people in addition to that. We have to see how a man who murders civilians for supplies justifies his actions. We have to see how a society of warriors brainwashes its people into believing some afterlife on the other side of this glorious battle. We, as viewers, see the world through their eyes, hopefully with the mindfulness that there's nothing glorious about killing people, burning their houses down, and enslaving their women. It lets us live in an age filled with honor, living alongside the kings that are practically treated as divine beings, all while getting to see how cruel these quote-unquote honorable people truly are. One man's honor is another man's murder, I guess. The reason why I wanted to make this video is because I see a lot of some of the shows that I watched as a kid in Vinland Saga, like Dragon Ball Z and Naruto. It respects realism a bit more, but battling enemies to overcome your problems is a core part of shonen battle anime. While so many modern shows like My Hero Academia will happily follow the tropes and check all the boxes for maximum appeal, they sacrifice substance to do so, in my opinion. You could cut like 15 kids from the primary class in My Hero and the show would hardly change for the worse. They have the explain no jutsu characters on the side, distracting you from the actual entertaining parts of the show. Vinland Saga takes the core of what makes shonen battle interesting, struggle through battle, and then provides, the rest that is required to make a story good. Conflicts that have an impact on the setting, characters making mistakes and miscalculations due to their haste or hubris, characters betraying each other, characters using each other for their own gain. That one guy who likes fighting so gosh darn much that you can't help but love him for his single-minded dedication to his craft. Great artists copy other great artists. It is very hard to even conceive of an idea without prior experiences. The hard part is figuring out what parts fit for what you're making and then co-opting those parts to fulfill your needs. If you just throw a tournament arc into your anime because Dragon Ball Z did it, then throw a billion characters nobody cares about that get hours of screen time like Frieren, then that shit's gonna suck. At least write in a reason that Stark gets to participate so we can cast Axe on all those filthy mages. Anyway, take the core of what it is that you like, think about why you like it. What specific details make it compelling, interesting, or unique? Try and boil down your childhood favorites into its base components, and then use that as a base to cook up something new and great, but with a familiar taste that keeps the old folks like me happy. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to hear me ramble about a specific topic, leave a comment, and I'll consider it for a future video. Subscribe if you want to see it. I love talking about game design in general, with a focus on tabletop role-playing games. I have links for Twitter, Blue Sky, Discord, and the NickNacks official website in the description, so you can start playing right now. I regularly post some of my favorite content I've made on social media. But until next time, farewell, fellow gamers.